The investigation into the incident involving Charlie Kirk at Utah Valley University has reached a critical stage, fueled by the diligent field reporting of Brian Entin. Forensic teams are encountering evidence that directly contradicts the official reports filed by local law enforcement. Brian Entin has exposed discrepancies that suggest the scope of the event involving Charlie Kirk is significantly larger than a single, isolated actor. We are observing clear signs of operational coordination, specifically tied to the sudden influx of private defense funding. Inside the prosecution's evidence files sits an audio record involving Lance Twiggs, an associate of the primary subject, Tyler Robinson. This audio record requires careful examination because the audio suggests a level of logistical backing previously unacknowledged by the authorities. Why was Lance Twiggs, a person of interest clearly linked to the physical evidence, granted procedural immunity while the investigation into the fatality of Charlie Kirk was still in the early stages? To understand the magnitude of the case involving Charlie Kirk, we must look beyond the initial narrative. Public reports characterized Tyler Robinson as an independent actor driven by ideological pressure. However, the unreleased surveillance logs from the university amphitheater reveal a completely different behavioral pattern. If you examine the footage, as Brian Entin has done, you see a subject who demonstrates a calculated, mechanical awareness of the environment. Tyler Robinson was not behaving like a rogue individual executing a personal vendetta against Charlie Kirk. Tyler Robinson was behaving like a trained operative navigating a pre-planned route. Then there is the variable of Lance Twiggs, the associate who relocated across state lines shortly after the incident. Brian Entin highlights the timeline of the St. George residence search, specifically the unexplained delay in the forensic sweep. Lance Twiggs displayed a forced composure in official statements. If Tyler Robinson was acting in isolation, why was the St. George residence already cleared of all personal digital data, except for the precise forensic items the investigation was structured to discover? Brian Entin has provided the most transparent view into the courtroom, where the federal analyst finally addressed the bench. The Provo courtroom became silent as the testimony provided by the sources of Brian Entin revealed a stark contradiction to the official timeline. The forensic DNA of Lance Twiggs was identified on the physical items recovered from the scene, including the handling surfaces of the assembly equipment. This revelation created an immediate procedural dilemma. Legal analysts initially viewed this as definitive evidence that would compromise the prosecution's theory. But Brian Entin has noted that the reality of the case involving Charlie Kirk is far more complex. The prosecution required the DNA identification of Lance Twiggs to become public record. The DNA identification functioned as an evidentiary decoy designed to stabilize the narrative. By centering the public discourse on the DNA of Lance Twiggs, which defense attorneys could easily explain away as standard environmental contamination from shared living quarters, the investigation successfully navigated away from the most glaring forensic anomaly. The anomaly is the 24-hour immunity protocol granted to Lance Twiggs. How does a cohabitating associate secure ironclad federal immunity before the medical review of Charlie Kirk is even finalized? This is where the official investigation faces a significant hurdle. Consider the forensic timeline of the Chick-fil-A surveillance. Tyler Robinson is observed at exactly 10:15 in the morning. The prosecution suggests Tyler Robinson was simply accessing food services before the termination event. But in investigative behavioral analysis, this action serves a specific logistical purpose. Tyler Robinson was establishing a verifiable timestamp on a high-definition public camera system before Tyler Robinson moved into the blind spots of the campus. The mechanical action of consuming a meal while in possession of restricted tactical equipment is the action of a subject establishing a concrete alibi timeline for a specific window of the morning. The Chick-fil-A visit was a tactical calibration point, and the fact that the prosecution glossed over this visit demonstrates that the investigation is more interested in the rapid closure of the file on Tyler Robinson. Why would Tyler Robinson target a location heavily associated with the conservative establishment, unless the location served as a prearranged dead drop or observation post for external handlers? As the prosecution enforces the narrative surrounding Tyler Robinson, we see a clear pattern of institutional oversight. Observe the recovery of the cartridge found on the roof near the campus amphitheater. The police report categorized the cartridge as an accidental discharge from an officer. But in a high-security perimeter scenario involving Charlie Kirk, police protocol mandates immediate discharge reporting. There was no discharge report filed for that specific cartridge, meaning the cartridge was left behind by an unidentified second element who transitioned across the roof while Tyler Robinson was distracting the university's security teams. Brian Entin has been the only journalist consistently pressing for clarification on this point. The forensic architecture of the site suggests there were at least two active elements. The Dodge Challenger captured on the Ring camera provides the logistical extraction route. The footage shows a bald male driver with 3 passengers, but the prosecution has redacted this evidence from the hearing records. The unidentified passengers in the car driven by the bald male represent the operational architects of the event involving Charlie Kirk. The existence of this secondary team explains the immediate legal maneuvering. The moment the immunity deal was signed in the private chambers of the courthouse, a quiet financial shift occurred across the digital landscape. Within 60 minutes of the latest report from Brian Entin, significant financial assets belonging to the family trust of Lance Twiggs were restructured into private holding companies. Financial analysts are currently tracking the movement of these assets. Shell companies linked to the high-tier legal defense of Tyler Robinson disappeared from the Utah State Registry. This is not a grand, shadowy conspiracy. This is standard corporate asset protection utilized by private intelligence firms and political action committees when an operation is compromised. An anonymous defense paralegal, a source embedded in the Utah County legal infrastructure, broke protocol to provide Brian Entin with these financial tracking data points. The stakes surrounding the case of Charlie Kirk have escalated to a critical level. The unseen financiers funding the legal team of Tyler Robinson possess the resources to mitigate the exposure of independent journalists like Brian Entin. What exactly is contained inside the sealed trust funds of Lance Twiggs that terrifies the Utah judicial system so much that the judicial system would openly risk a loss of public trust? We are witnessing a systemic failure of the process. Tyler Robinson is the containment subject, and Lance Twiggs is the protected witness. Look at the way Lance Twiggs avoided the preliminary hearing. The judge ruled that Lance Twiggs did not need to appear, a decision that prevents the defense from asking a direct question regarding the assembly equipment. If that question is answered under oath, the entire lone actor narrative surrounding Tyler Robinson will collapse. The evidence of the case involving Charlie Kirk snaps into a sharp, undeniable picture. The suppressed Ring camera footage clearly showed an extraction team moving swiftly through the residential streets of Provo. The DNA of Lance Twiggs on the equipment was a deliberate forensic plant designed by legal experts to identify Tyler Robinson as the primary subject, while the real professional unit escaped. The family holding companies of Lance Twiggs trace back to private defense contractors operating just outside the boundaries of federal oversight. The incident involving Charlie Kirk was a meticulously contracted operation authorized by entities that operate above standard legal scrutiny. Every forensic detail points to a synchronized, privately funded operation. Tyler Robinson is the containment subject, designed to hold the responsibility for an operation that required significant capital to bypass the high-security perimeters of the university. The media narrative is designed to keep the public focused on the DNA of Lance Twiggs, so the public does not look at the corporate bank transfers linked to the defense team of Tyler Robinson. Brian Entin is the only one asking the right questions, but even Brian Entin has limits to what can be revealed without facing severe litigation. You must subscribe to join the investigative archive and remain protected from the impending procedural narrative. Now I need you to weigh in on the single most dangerous question of the entire case involving Charlie Kirk. Is Tyler Robinson the ultimate architect who flawlessly orchestrated the perfect operation from a campus rooftop, or just a tragically manipulated subject who is used by a privately funded intelligence syndicate? Comment the exact answer below right now, because I am actively pulling the most deeply disturbing theories directly from the comment section for the next part of this investigation.